We all love a good mystery, don't we? Something that keeps us guessing until the very end. And what's more mysterious than a haunting? Hi, everyone. I'm your host, and today we're going to solve a haunting mystery for you. Have you ever stared too long into a mirror until your reflection felt like it didn't quite belong to you, until it seemed almost alive? Some people say mirrors don't just reflect you, they keep a piece of you. And if that's true, then what happens when someone owns hundreds of mirrors, each holding fragments of trapped souls? This is the story of the mirror collector. It was the late 1800s, and a man named Albrecht Kreutz lived in a sprawling manor on the outskirts of Prague. He was not known for his charm or generosity, but for his obsession: mirrors, Venetian glass, gilded French pieces, Spanish hand-carved frames, even cracked tavern mirrors if it reflected. He wanted it. Neighbors whispered that Kreutz believed mirrors were more than ornaments. He claimed the glass was a veil separating this world from another, and that if you stared long enough, the veil thinned. Some said he kept journals filled with sketches of figures he'd seen moving inside the glass, figures that looked like shadows of the living. When Kreutz died mysteriously in 1893, his manor was sealed. No one wanted to touch his collection. The villagers' claimed screams echoed through the halls at night whenever moonlight streamed across the windows. For decades, the place rotted. But in 1921, during a rainstorm, a young traveler named Emil Novak sought shelter. His train had derailed, and with no inn for miles, the looming manor seemed the only option. He entered through the front doors, swollen with age and dampness. Inside, the smell of mildew and dust weighed heavy. But what caught his attention immediately were the mirrors. They were everywhere, stacked against walls, lined in hallways, even propped against staircases. Their surfaces were dulled with age, some cracked, others nearly pristine. Emil's lantern cast a soft light across them, and for a brief moment, he swore he saw more than just his reflection. He shook it off. Exhaustion and hunger could play tricks. He found a drawing room and set down his bag, lighting the fireplace with difficulty. Above the mantel hung the largest mirror of all, an enormous oval, its frame blackened with age and carved with grotesque cherubs whose eyes seemed to human. He sat before it, letting the warmth settle into his bones. That was when he noticed something. His reflection blinked, but he hadn't. At first, Emil told himself it was the flicker of the fire. Shadows, nothing more. But the longer he stared, the more wrong it felt. His reflection's eyes seemed brighter, its lips slightly curled into a smirk. Then, slowly, the reflection raised a hand. Emil's own hand remained still in his lap. The fire popped, startling him, and when he looked back, his reflection was normal again. He decided to ignore it. Sleep would cure his nerves. He dragged a blanket from a sofa lying across the floor. But as he drifted toward slumber, he heard a sound, a whisper. It was faint, like breath against glass. He turned his lantern higher, and in its dim glow, he saw movement. Not in the room, but in the mirrors. Faces pressed against the glass, dozens of them, pale, distorted, their mouths opening and closing as though screaming, yet only silence filled the air. Emil stumbled back, heart pounding, nearly tripping over the blanket. He turned in a circle. Every mirror now showed him a crowd of strangers pressed against the inside of the glass. And they were watching him. He fled down the hall, trying door after door, but every room was the same mirrors on every wall, and in each his reflection lagged behind, moving a second too late. Sometimes it didn't move at all. He tried the front door. Stuck. He pulled, shoved, rammed his shoulder until pain shot through his arm, but it refused to budge. The manor wouldn't let him leave. Desperate, Emil smashed a mirror with a chair. Glass shattered across the floor, cutting his hands. He thought he'd freed himself from one of those twisted faces, but when he looked closer, the shards still reflected him, dozens of him, each smiling wider than the last. One of the shards whispered his name. Panicked, Emil ran upstairs, his lantern sputtering. At the end of a hallway stood a door heavier than the rest. He forced it open and froze. The master bedroom, and every inch of the walls was covered with mirrors. In the center of the room stood a chair, Facing a tall standing mirror of pure black glass, its frame was unlike the other smooth, almost like it was grown rather than carved. The moment Emil looked into it, he saw not his reflection, but Kreutz, the mirror collector himself. His gaunt face stared back with hollow eyes, lips curling into a grin, and then he stepped forward, not in the room, but in the reflection. Emil backed away, shaking his head in disbelief, but the figure in the glass reached out. A pale, skeletal hand pressed against the other side. The glass rippled. Emil screamed, stumbling, but every mirror in the room now showed the same thing. Kreutz climbing closer, reaching through, and behind him, the trapped souls pressed against the glass shrieked in silence, their mouths stretched, unnaturally wide, their eyes begging. The last thing Emil saw before the lantern went out was his reflection, smiling, then darkness. The manor still stands today, boarded up and rotting. Locals say if you walk past on a clear night, you can hear tapping from inside, like fingernails scratching glass. And if you dare to peek through a crack in the shutters, you'll see rows of mirrors, glowing faintly in the moonlight. And sometimes, if you're unlucky, you'll see a man's face smiling back at you, even when you're not looking in a mirror.